Good morning, Tri-Cities. It's 9 o'clock and time for Coffee with Karl. I'm Karl Dye from Tridec, and we are excited to have Lance Stevens from Framatome with us this morning. Lance, if you want to turn on your camera, we'll get rolling. Good morning, Lance. Oh, sorry, you're on mute. It's good that we get that out of the way, especially since it's Friday the 13th. It happens all the time. Good morning, Lance.
How are you, Karl?
Great. How are you?
Wonderful. Thanks for the invite. I was very excited to get it.
Yeah, this is long overdue. We've been looking forward to talking to you and understanding more about the nuclear industry, especially the nuclear fuel industry. So looking forward to this discussion. First, I wanted to thank Mike Miller from Moon Security. Everybody saw the video that we just played. Mike's a Tridec board member, as is Lance, and we really appreciate his sponsorship for this. He and his crew do a really good job on security, whether it's for your business or your home, as you saw in the video. We offer a lot of solutions. So downtown Pasco, go see Mike and Moon Security. Lance, you're the vice president for the Richland site for Framatome. Let's kick off Coffee with Karl the way we always do. I'm going to share my coffee mug, and I think what I've come to learn about the nuclear industry, related to the nuclear fuel industry, is kind of summed up with this cup from Ted Lasso. So Ted Lasso talks about believe, and I think that's a story I've heard many times. And Lance, with your experience in the industry, maybe you could verify that the nuclear industry has kind of been revitalized to some degree with the increased need for more power generation, especially carbon free. And I think believe as people like you and with Framatome and in the industry that have been there for a long time have lived through these things, and hopefully we're going to be in a new dawn for nuclear power. But that's my mug. I thought it was appropriate for our conversation this morning, talk about nuclear power, nuclear fuel.
Very good. Let me answer that first question. You're right. We've had 3 or 4, we call them nuclear renaissances. And so we're hoping this one is for real. I love this statement, believe, and we truly think it is. And there's a lot of reasons why we think it is. Climate change, of course, and the objectives that we need to meet to prove that. And there's a law in place that supports growth for the nuclear industry, and that's absolutely key. So it's not just the industry growing, it's the industry with support from the government. So that's a big difference compared to what it was, say, 10 years ago. So that's one of the reasons that we believe. Ted Lasso also, I love the show. He talks about the goldfish. And so what we need to do is forget about the old renaissances that didn't pan out, and let's make this one work.
It's very well said, and I appreciate the Ted Lasso reference as well. Great. You have a mug or mug story you want to share with us, Lance? That was a great way to kick it off, just with my mug.
For those
and your story,
who know me and work with me, know I absolutely love coffee from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. You'll always see me with a cup. We were talking earlier prior to this call about, do people know who Framatome is? And we've been around, we've been in the community for over 50 years. We were started in 1969, but we've been known by a lot of names, and I actually have some mugs from some of the previous names. Started as Jersey, went to Exxon. I joined when it was called Advanced Nuclear Fuel. I have a whole file drawer full of these coffee mugs. Siemens.
There you go.
Corporation, Siemens Nuclear. We were for a short while Framatome, and then we went to Areva. I love that name. It was really good. And we divested. We split up, and so we needed a new name for the future Framatome, so we're back to Framatome. So
there we go.
You know us from some of those names. And I have one last mug I'll show you. Sorry. Future, we have a contract with Richland. And because this was an Areva mug, I put a sticker over that. I wanted to make sure we are hiring. I mean, I think that's clear. That's one of the main messages I want to leave you with, is we are here as part of the community, and we see the growth that will be coming, and we are hiring. So
no, that's a great point, and we'll get into that. I think you put a couple good slides together to kind of kick us off and give us the Framatome overview. So if you're good with that, Lance, we'll ask Tracy to start those slides and we'll run through those. And then anyone that's listening or watching on Zoom through the webinar can ask us questions through the question and answer feature at the bottom. If you're watching on social media, you can post your questions in the comment section and we'll do our best to get to all the questions that anybody has. But Lance, take it away.
Awesome. We have about 6 slides. I will assume that the audience does not have a detailed nuclear power, so we keep it real high level. Framatome has been in business for 60 years. The Richland site has been making fuel for over 50, founded in 1969. We build fuel assemblies for nuclear plants. That's our core business. And so power plants run using nuclear fuel. That fuel will last about 6 to 8 years. And each of the power plants has to replenish fuel within its core about 18 months on an 18-month cycle. So you're always hearing about the Energy Northwest outage. One of the things that they do, they load fuel, new fuel, during that outage. Framatome is worldwide. We have around 15,000 employees. We have 550 here, and on the East Coast, we have around 2,500, and the balance are in Germany and France and all over the world. We design nuclear power plants and all the systems around nuclear power plants. And then we have a large part of our business is called installed base. And so those are the people that go and support the care, the maintenance, and the upgrades for the power plants within the U.S. There are 92 nuclear power plants in the U.S. 31 of those are boiling water reactors. That's a type of reactor that's our neighbor north of us. And the balance are pressurized water reactors. The difference, the high level difference between those two, a boiling water reactor is a GE design from years and years ago, and it boils the water in the core, and that's what goes straight into the turbine. Pressurized has a pressurized loop, and that heats up a second loop of water that does not go through the core. So that's a Westinghouse and Framatome design, and that's called a pressurized water reactor. One of the niches that we have here, this site, we are not the original equipment manufacturer or the OEM for many of the plants. And so our niche, what this site has become known for, is we will make any type of fuel. And that has put us in a very good position for the future. Tracy, you want to go to the next slide, please? This is a pictogram of who is Richland. So we started in 1969. We got an extension, a 40-year extension. So we're here for the long term, certainly working with the community to make sure that we're here for the long term. We have a generous capital investment program. So we're always maintaining the plant, making upgrades, maintenance, and replacements. I had mentioned we're known as the most modern and flexible fuel fab facility in the world. And a couple other items to note: we invented what was called dry conversion powder process. That was invented here, and it's the world's best powder process. So we bring in UF6, that's the in-feed material in big cylinders, and the dry conversion process is used to turn that into powder. One of the real benefits of that, it's a very green process. So we have hardly any, there's no effluents, there's no hazardous effluents from the site. We sewer straight to the city, obviously with full monitoring, but it's a very clean process. It's a very clean plant. And then the last item in the lower right-hand column is regulatory performance. And we make sure we tell every one of our new employees how much of an asset this is for the site. What this means, the NRC sends inspection teams to us, probably 6 to 8 per year, and they do deep dives to make sure that we're doing exactly what we should be doing. And they're very thorough inspections. At the end of every other year, there's a license performance review or a summary from the NRC. And we have gotten the highest grade that you can get from the NRC for 16 years. That's something that we can ruin in a heartbeat. So we make sure that all employees know that. Next slide, Tracy. I've covered a lot of this already. 550 employees. We run every shift that you can imagine, and that's all tied to the demand that we have as well as the rates of the process. So we have day shift jobs, A, B, C, D. We're up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Build fuel assembly, not only for the US, but also for the Far East. Now, Taiwan has shut down all of its nuclear power plants, unfortunately. But Japan is starting to come back from the tsunami, from the 2011 tsunami. And we have made several reloads for Japan in the past 2 years, and we have 3 more that are on the horizon. So that's a very positive sign for us. I had mentioned this before, not only is it a green product, so this is a key low carbon, zero carbon emission power source, but it's also a green facility. And we care a lot about making sure the lights we use are efficient, making sure that we recycle everything that we can. It's a very green plant. Even we get boxes of tubes from France, and we'll break those boxes down and we'll send them back to France for reuse. So lots of thought goes into making sure that we are very good stewards for the environment. Last one there, the dry conversion process has an interesting byproduct, and that is very pure HF acid. And that is sold for commercial use for circuit boards, for example. All right, Tracy. Thank you. A couple of fun facts. We like to tell employees that you're responsible for 5% of the utility generated power in the US, and that is green power, like I had mentioned. We make over 90 million UO2 pellets. 5 of these pellets are about the size of the tip of your pinky. 5 of those pellets can fuel a household for a year. And last year we made around 2,300 fuel assemblies. So those are the reloads. And we're making reloads for pressurized water and boiling water reactor fuel. And we've made about 70,000 of those assemblies in our 54 years. This is an interesting map. It shows where all the power plants are. It's, one would ask, why the heck did we start in Southeast Washington? And it just has to do with where the person that started the plant, that's where that person lived. They used to work for Battelle back in the day, and this is where he wanted to call home. So that's why we're way out here, far away from all the power plants. Our installed base, 2,500 people, are in Virginia. So you can see they're very well situated to support all of the power plants on the East Coast. And we're proud to say that we do supply Palo Verde fuel. So the one plant shown there in Arizona, we have that contract now. And so we're at least supplying one of the 3 power plants on the West Coast. The other thing that's really exciting is because of the benefits for nuclear power, we're seeing some remarkable changes in the industry. And that includes, there's a plant in Michigan that is called Palisades. And we provided the fuel for local economic reasons. They decided to shut that power plant down about 2 years ago. And because of the momentum around the industry and momentum for nuclear energy, there is a large effort to restart the Palisades power plant, which is truly, it's a monumental mark, and it goes back to your statement about belief. Here is evidence
Yeah.
for belief. Some incredible things happening. And I think it's my last slide for now, just a high level. Our current core business is light water reactor fuel. So we're providing the fuel for the 90 or for a portion of the 93 reactors across the US. In the future, I showed you the mug from NuScale. We have the fuel contract both for NuScale, smaller modular reactor, as well as Holtec. And small modular reactors are being designed to be safer, cheaper to build, a more efficient source of future power from nuclear. And then looking even beyond that is the whole world, the exciting world of advanced reactors. And so some of the names in that market include TerraPower, USNC, X Energy, and Kairos, as well as probably about 30 other names that are in the mix right now. And Framatome's strategy with respect to advanced reactors is to be part of the supply chain. We have some core technologies. We know where the market's going. So we want to make sure that we've got the technology that can support a lot of these different future reactor types. So that's a quick summary of who we are, Karl.
That was really good, Lance. And I was just thinking, you know, I've been here 3.5 years, and in that time frame, I think I've probably now had 5 or 6 meetings or tours of Framatome, and so I've had a chance to learn a lot of a little bit about both your history and on the fuel assemblies. You talked about 2,300 fuel assemblies, so the pellets that are put into the metal rods that are shaped. It's really cool to go through one of your buildings because you've got like a model or a version of every different type and style of fuel assemblies that you made, which is pretty impressive, right? Like I think of an analogy to like the auto industry and stuff. And in a lot of ways, you guys are a custom shop, but then you're also a manufacturing facility. So once, you know, you customize the design or adopt the design, how are we going to build this? Then you gear up and you do it in a production standard, which is really impressive. And that analog to other industries is really hard, but I think it does speak very highly of Framatome for sure within the nuclear industry that you serve.
Thank you, Karl, for saying that. But we do have the
it's
museum of fuel assemblies, like you said. So if anyone is interested in seeing that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. You know, one of the things that I've learned over the years, few years that I've been here, Lance, is kind of your last slide there, the advanced reactors, small modular reactors, even micro modular reactors. And I know that not all of them. So I know you talked about NuScale. NuScale is going to use kind of the existing fuel type as far as enrichment, but can you talk a little bit about HALEU fuel, what it is, what HALEU stands for, and then, you know, what Framatome's opportunities might be coming up within that advanced fuel market?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our current market is light water reactor fuel, and we have a license where we can use enriched uranium up to 5%. So the isotope of the uranium that's critical for the fission process, they enrich that up to 5%. There's an ongoing large project that we're doing that's called Advanced Fuel Management, and we are changing the plant such that by the end of 26, we'll be able to have slightly higher enrichment. That's important for power plants to be able to have more efficient runtime. And so we'll be ready by early 27 with that. Then there's a whole nother beyond that is the advanced reactor market. We will be able to make some of the fuel types up to 10%. And then longer term, we will go up to 20%. So the term HALEU refers to that product that goes up to 20%. And what's really unique is it's a completely different looking fuel. So it looks nothing like what we showed pictures of here. So some examples are, one of the more common examples is something called triso fuel, which is It looks like a little pellet. And so we'll be making uranium pellets that go into some later processes, but it has no resemblance to fuel that we're making these days. So it's very exciting. We're all the industry is moving in that direction, and we're all working together to make that happen.
And Lance, when you say that even with the existing fleet, even with the fuel assemblies and fuel pellets that you're making today, to go a slightly more enriched version, it makes the plants more efficient. Does that mean that they can run longer in between their outages when they switch fuel, or is that the main thing, that you can run longer before like you have a reduction in your power?
Spot on, Carl. So the biggest benefit, the biggest obvious benefit, is a plant can go from 18-month cycles to 24-month cycles.
Okay.
And that's with some good designs and use of these slightly higher enrichments.
Okay. And with the TRISO fuel and the HALEU, which I think stands for high assay low enrichment uranium. I think that's HELEU. With that fuel type, will that fit your production line? So like you talked about with your slide, you bring in these canisters of UF6 gas, right? Mm-hmm. And then that deconversion process that you do, the dry process conversion, converts the gas into a powder, and then you condense the powder into the pellets, and there's I think a heat treating process to make them so they don't fall apart. Will you make the HALEU fuel the same way, or just out of curiosity, will there be a different process that you guys use? I mean, especially where you patented that process, will it be the same or different or similar, or what's it going to look like?
Learned a lot in your 5 visits, so we're hiring, Karl, so please look us up. Different. It will be different.
Okay.
And so one of the advantages that we have, we do something called lean manufacturing here, and that's based on the Toyota car industry. It's a fascinating sector of manufacturing. So we use lean manufacturing. What that allows us to do is become more and more efficient. One of the things that we've done is we have been able to shrink our footprint needed for light water reactor fuel. And what that does is it frees up building space. So with this freed up building space, we are actually doing some prototype work for some of the advanced reactor companies. And so we're using some freed up building space and the technology and the engineers that we have to help develop and show prototypes for these advanced reactor fuels. As the market develops, developing market brings money. With money, the long-term hope is we will be expanding greatly here at the site. There's a lot of wonderful opportunities out here. 5, 6, 7 years from now, we should look different. We will look different.
Well, that brings up a good point. I know that we talked about the past, but essentially today, your operation is funded through commercial operations, right? Like you make a product, you sell it, you get paid for it. That funds your operations, and your parent company helps with capital expenditures for new investments. But so as you move into expanding your product line, let's say to HALEU fuel or TRISO fuels or advanced fuels, are there new grant opportunities maybe that Framatome hasn't tapped into in the past? Like, does Department of Energy, right? Because I mean, we just talked on we started about the hydrogen hub announcement that came out this morning. So the Department of Energy and the federal government is investing in clean energy, and so advanced nuclear is a big part of that. But are there any grants coming up that would help Framatome support this expansion?
Absolutely. There's one large one that we all have our eye on, and it's called the HALEU RFP from DOE. It's basically, how does DOE help support the supply chain, the building of the supply chain, so that we have the HALEU product that can go into the final fuel for these new reactors. And so that RFP, it always will come out next week is what we hear, but it's probably still about 2 or 3 months out is the intel. that is
Yeah.
something that we think we are very well suited for. And one of those, obviously, one of the parts of winning a grant is having a strong community. And if I can do a little sidestep here,
Yeah.
I would like to make sure before we end this call, I want to thank the community, thank TRIDAC for how much you all do to really show my upper management how dedicated this community is for clean energy. And it's impressive. I hate to go through the list because I'll forget some, but WSU and CBC and the educators, Port of Benton, TRIDAC, Clean Energy Supplier Alliance, Department of Commerce, governor, representatives, City of Richland, Energy Northwest. I'm going through my list here so I don't forget anyone, but it's incredible what this community can offer. And we've had a couple of opportunities. Karl, you've been in the room when we've had these opportunities. About 4 weeks ago, we had our CEO of Framatome. He came over. He does what's called the road show. So he comes and just describes the strategy for Framatome. We took the opportunity to sit him in front of the community, especially through Vertical Washington. It was coordinated through Vertical Washington, and the input and the feedback that our CEO heard from the community was second to none. And that was the second time that the community had shown that support to Framatome management. And both times the feedback is, I have never seen a community that is as positive and supportive as what I have just seen. So it really left a mark on some key individuals for Framatome. So I want to thank you all for that. It's very helpful. One of the things while he was here, sorry, Karl, while he was here,
go ahead.
when you make a soundbite as a CEO, we're going to grab those sound bites. And so he said this in front of our employees, and then he said this also in front of the community. He said that Richland will be the center of excellence for advanced reactor fuels. And so we're going to run with that soundbite until it wears out.
Well, Lance, I was just going to say thank you for that. And, honestly, not to downplay it by any means, but it's our job. It's what we're really here for. Framatome for that time period since 1969, it's been such a key part of our community and part of that. And even, at TRIDAC, although I'm new here, like one of the things that really excites me about the job that we get to do for our community is the history of nuclear, right? I mean, we started in '63. That same year, President Kennedy was here to launch a power generating component to the end reactor that led to what today is Energy Northwest and FFTF, fast flux test reactor, right, which is still on the Hanford site that ran for a while. That was really competitive, unfortunately, because of politics. Was shut down when Idaho National Lab became kind of the nuclear energy lab, and that's where nuclear testing was going to be, and that's just kind of the way they did it, along with other things, I think. But I think even your map is really telling us. We think about that history, right? But because, like you said, besides the fact that the guy that started it as Jersey Nuclear in 1969 was from Battelle and he wanted to live here, I think the other thing was at that time with the precursor to Energy Northwest, there was going to be a plethora of reactors in the Northwest, right? And so unfortunately that didn't work out. There was one. But I think as we think about that history and we think about the economic opportunity for your industry and for nuclear fuel in general, and talking about this renaissance, the struggle I think that Energy Northwest precursor had with building all these reactors at the same time was multitude of problems. But the biggest one was the forecast for electrical demand wasn't there, right? What we were told by one of the pillars and leaders of our community, Bob Ferguson, a couple of years ago before he unfortunately passed away, was that what drove the previous Energy Northwest to build all those reactors at once was this huge forecast that was just like a 45-degree slope coming out of World War II that said we'll always need more electrical power. Well, it didn't come through, but now, fast forward 50-ish years, 40, 50 years, that's coming true, and it's really because of the need for electrical power that's not only reliable, has the most availability out of any other electrical form, but it's also carbon free. And so, like you said, when we talk about climate change, it's the answer. And so all those things together, and our community's, history and commitment to your industry is, I mean, it's part of our DNA. Like, we couldn't support Framatome. We couldn't not support Framatome, right? We couldn't show up. I mean, it's what we do, and we're so proud to have you guys here, and all the successes that you've had. I don't know, I'm kind of gushing now. I gotta ask you another question so we can move on. But
believe, Karl.
yeah, you gotta believe, and we do believe. That's right. That's right. So Center of Excellence, I love that soundbite that your president gave, and it was really an honor to be there with part of the community. But as we talk about TRISO fuel and even the higher enriched fuels up to 20, or kind of this maybe up to 10 standard, are there other fuel types that maybe in the future you'd get into as you build out this Center of Excellence that we haven't talked about yet, just to kind of cover the bases?
Well, I had said earlier, there's probably, I don't know the exact number now, but there's probably about 30 advanced reactor designs that are in some form, whether it's conceptual or submitting licenses already. So we don't know exactly what the picture is going to look like 10 years from now. But our strategy is bring the technology and be ready to support whoever is the last 3 or 4 standing. And what that means, we do know our dry conversion process is something that can be very suitable for HALEU. And so we're designing that process so that we can operate with the higher enriched material safely. That will be the centerpiece for Framatome support for advanced reactors. From that, though, you can go into metal fuel, HALEU metal fuel. You can feed TRISO product. There's many fuel types that dry conversion process can feed. So that's what our strategy is right now, and we will keep expanding based on the market.
Yeah. Before we go into the next part of our conversation around workforce that you talked about before, Lance, can you talk to us a little bit about the regulatory environment that you guys live in? You talked about basically you are a green facility doing a green process, you have no waste, but the regulatory environment that you live in, and even I think as you talked about some of the timelines for that, like somebody that's in a different industry, especially construction, might go like, why is it going to take them 4 years to do this? But I think that's a really important thing we wanted to highlight, is just the high degree of regulation that you guys deal with, and how well you do with it on the processes and procedures, and the 16 years with no significant remarks, or I forget the term, but I mean that's really huge, because manufacturers think about like ISO certification or other international certifications, and I think where you guys are at with NRC is way above that. But can you tell us a little bit about that, and how it ensures the safety and then adds to your quality control process?
Thank you. That's a great question. Appreciate it, Karl.
Yeah.
Regulatory, that's one of the assets, actually. That's one of the reasons why we are working with some of the advanced reactor companies, is because that's what we bring. We bring the infrastructure and we bring the processes so that we can analyze new processes in a very safe and compliant manner. Like I had said, the NRC is here 6 to 8 times a year. They bring 3 to 4 inspectors per visit, so they're going through everything we do from paperwork to designs to analyses, etc. So lots of deep diving. But we have a license, and whenever you talk to anyone in the nuclear industry, they all should give you a very consistent safety is our first priority. So if you talk to Bob Schutz, if you talk to anyone in the nuclear industry, that should be their response, and it is. And so every meeting starts with a safety message. Karl, you missed that, by the way.
Oops, sorry.
But it's continual, and we bring in new employees. They need to understand safety culture is part of it. So safety culture is one layer. The next layer is called the integrated safety analysis. I won't go into too much depth, but it's basically if you change something or if you bring something new in, there's a very rigorous process to analyze every single what if. What if this happens? What if that happens? So it's a very rigorous process. And then once you're done, you have to submit that to the NRC. So if you've changed something, I'm going to modify our license. We send it to the NRC and they pour in thousands of man hours reviewing what you've submitted. And it takes about 24 months for them to review a new major license change. And so that plays a big part in why these timelines are so long, Karl.
Yeah, no, that's a great description. I think it leads us right in to the conversation about workforce, because you talked about the safety culture that has always been a part of your operation here in Richland. But how's it going with workforce? I mean, I'll just throw you that softball first, Lance, because we've talked about it many times. I have a feeling for it, but can you just talk about your industry and like your existing workforce at Framatome and, you know, the demographics and kind of the shift that you're seeing and, you know, just jump right into workforce.
Yeah. Thanks for the softball. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There is not a more important thing for this site right now than recruiting and retention. So the competition for good skilled workers is intense, more intense than I've ever seen it. And so that goes to, I love what you and Tracy and others talk about as far as it's a twofold model. We need to grow our own future workforce through STEM programs, through elementary and middle and high school and college. We have a lot of very good participants who are helping us grow. And it's not a but, it's an and, we still need more. And so when you talk about the fertilizer plant, the expansion for ATI, expansion for Framatome, the number of things going on in this area, we need people. We need good people. And there was an article, I don't know if you saw this, Karl, there was an article yesterday in the Tri-City Herald about Washington being the #1 state for safe high schools. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's not just shooting, it talked about bullying, and talked about all kinds of things that make a high school less safe. But we have so much going for us in this community that the future is extremely bright. That said, we are where we are right now, and we are looking for any ways that we can improve our recruiting and retention. Something we started about 8 years ago. We started something called Careers in Manufacturing, and we built a wonderful network of people from governments, from TriDec, from industry. And the momentum was fantastic. And the message that we had is a 4-year degree is wonderful, and it's not the only way to have a very good career. And we worked with you all for Tri-City Connect. We had a couple very good sessions. And then the pandemic hit. And just like so many other things, that momentum that we had built has really been dispersed. And so we're motivated to work with you all to rebuild that. On that same front, so we're looking for engineers, we're looking for, one of the things I like to say about the site, it's a macro economy. And so we need, from supply chain to business, to supervisors, to leaders, to engineers, we need every single discipline. And that's kind of exciting. It gives you a variety of people when you go out recruiting, and the hiring sign is out.
And you know, one of the things that struck me, and I think it was like last December, we had a meeting. It was kind of cold that day, and I got there early, so I sat like in your reception area, just waiting for the rest of the team that we were bringing together for a meeting to come in. And it just, as I watched people clock in coming through the front entrance, I was just struck by something that we talked about before, but I could just visually see it. And that's just seemed to be like the average age of your employees. And I think as I think about it, I think what a great indicator for Framatome. That's obviously a wonderful place to work, right? Like it felt to me like you've got a workforce that have worked there for, maybe their whole career. And I mean, everyone ages, and of course the baby boomers, are moving into that retirement phase. Is that one of the drivers for your need for workforce, or are there other factors, that you guys are looking at? Is it obviously growth and expansion? I mean, you're going to add a lot of new jobs, but can you talk a little bit about that? And again, I see it as a positive. Like, clearly, Framatome is a really, really great place to work because people are spending their whole career there.
So great point. Lots of people who have been here for 25, 30, 35. I just gave out an award for 45 years of service. And so,
is that right?
One of the things that is you can almost guarantee on is if someone leaves, if they retire or they leave for whatever reason, they always say the same thing, and that is what I miss the most is the people. So I'll speak to that part for this. Framatome is a good, unbiased, but it's a good place to work. And then a lot of us obviously are getting older. So there's going to be a huge number of retirements coming up, and we need to stoke the pipeline for the successors. And there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of desire to mentor younger people. And so we are, that's a big part of what we're trying to do. We have a couple, I don't want to go on too many paths here, but let me get back to your question. So we're facing a lot of retirements. One thing that's really interesting, the French president, Macron, about a year ago, announced the restart and the building of 6 nuclear power plants, 6+. And one of the main reasons he did that is the writing is on the wall. We're going to lose a lot of the experience that was built in making these and maintaining these nuclear power plants. And so strategically, it's a great move. It's re-engaged the French industry and the US industry in supporting. We're going to keep building these. We need that skill set, from craft to operators to leaders to engineers. And then one thing, going back to your tour, you mentioned going through the tour here. One thing that's cool, when you bring an engineer, a young engineer, through some of the parts of the plant, it kind of sells itself, because there's a lot of automation, there's software, there's electrical, there's chemical, there's mechanical, there's all kinds of things that a young engineer could find their niche, find their passion about. And had related to that, a couple of our newer process engineers have been very specific. And one of the reasons I came here is because I want to make a product that matters. And that's another thing that we're seeing as a way we can sell and potentially help recruiting, is we do make a product that means something.
Yeah, that's I really appreciate that. I know, and I can't remember, we had Bob Schutz on when we talked about Energy Forward Alliance a couple of weeks ago, but I know he's told the story. I think he might have even told it to your president, that when they hire new engineers, the same as in your process, he does a little entry interview with them, and one of the questions he asks, like, why do you want to work for a nuclear power operator? And he said many times, I think very well, which supports what you just said, Lance, that is that so many young people, and I guess Gen Z, or I think that's the generation we're in, for people that are coming out of college now, so many times say that I'm concerned about climate change. And I know that nuclear is a way for us to maintain our lifestyle through clean electrical generation without, and taking carbon back out of the atmosphere. And I want to be a part of that. Like, that's really, maybe, I don't know if previous generations in nuclear felt that way. If, I mean, obviously the history of it going back to World War II, the Manhattan Project, and then the crossover into power, I think it's hard to second guess previous generations, like their motivation to get into it. But I think that that's something, as we think about things we can do in workforce, right? And just in general in the Tri-Cities, because as it comes to being carbon free, we're on electrical generation, we're already like 92% plus carbon free. And so maybe there's some things together that we could bring out that really motivate young people. And like you said, create this pipeline, keep them here, but then also maybe help with recruiting people that are qualified for your jobs of the future to bring them here, because, hey, we're known as this clean energy center. And of course, we talked about it before, but Energy Forward Alliance, that's one thing that we want to make sure we can do, is come up with that communications and marketing across the board on being clean. just like you're going to be, or you are the, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Center of excellence for fuel manufacturing. The Tri-Cities is and could be even, better in the right kind of promotion. The Center of Excellence for Clean Energy or, clean environment, something like that. But is that, you brought it up, but is that something that you guys have thought about even in your recruiting to?
Spot on. And think about, what CBC and WSU bring and some of their, the clean, and I'm going to mess the name up, but WSU's clean energy concept. So many things are just lining up, and all the work that Vertical Washington is doing. We have a great message. We need to figure out how to get the message out. Basically was asking before this call, we were talking and she posed the question about, do people know who Framatome is? And there's a lot of elementary and high school and middle school kids that have no idea that we're out here and have no idea what good careers could look like here.
I think that's a great point. I think we all, to some degree, have seen it, ourselves or with our kids or grandkids in some cases, that, any company or industry's knowledge sometimes gets passed down through families. And I think to your point, what can we do working together that we just show young people the companies and industries that we have here and show them, hey, there's greater opportunities here than you might realize. And I think I don't think it's unrealistic to think that as we engage with kids while they're in K-12 school system or in CBC or WSU as an example, that we could also engage with their families, and so maybe their parents, because I think upskilling for some of those jobs you talked about is a real opportunity in so many areas that people, if they know, I can take this class or get this certificate and it's offered at CBC or WSU and I could qualify for this job and I could make more money. That's the American dream, right? Like, who's going to say no to that to some degree?
What's really interesting too, both of the local schools that you've mentioned, they do tout the number of first generation students that they have, which is pretty remarkable. And then you flip that, or you combine that with, we have a very strong intern program here. But about 6 years ago, we used to bring interns from Michigan and from Florida and from all over. They would stay for 3 months, they would check the box and leave. So we have focused our intern program on local universities, and that's been to very good success. And part of that is provide an internship, stay in contact with a student that can even work for us part-time. Before they graduate, we will make you an offer if they are, if we want them to be a long-term employee, and a large number of our newer engineers came through that pipeline. So that coupling of industry and education local is very powerful. Yeah, well, and I think in manufacturing, and I forget the name of the group, Lance, but I know that you were leading a group of manufacturers that was focused on this. And I know you talked about careers to manufacturing. Was that the name of the group, or was that a separate? That was it. Yeah. I think that crossover from the education or training or awareness in manufacturing is really interesting. I know earlier this year when we brought in a company from another country that was interested in doing battery component manufacturing, and it's going through the site selection, we toured CBC, and it was interesting because when they went into CBC's nuclear related fields, some of the degrees and certificates that they produce out of that, and they broke it down into the classes that they did, this company could see a big opportunity in that because a lot of the quality and safety were similar things that they needed in their industry. There was some volatile gases they were dealing with there. So like the crossover, even on the training or education side, let alone on, and again, I'm just, I guess, practicing this for, as we work to engage with younger people. That's what makes it great, is being right here in the Tri-Cities, because there's so many ways that you could go. If you go in this pathway, then there's other companies that could do some internal training to get you where they need it. I think there's a real opportunity for just like what you guys did with careers to manufacturing, to say, hey, you don't just have to come to one area. You could go take these classes, get the certificate, potentially be qualified for all of these companies. And I think for a young person, like, why wouldn't you want to have
a choice, and then to your point, Framtone's such a great company to work for. It probably gives you guys a chance to shine in that kind of a, being connected to that pipeline potentially.
Very well said. And also I'll throw this out. Nothing wrong with going away for college, but boy, there's something to be said about graduating with a lower amount of debt. So
Oh boy,
positive for staying local. One thing I'd be remiss not to mention, we have a couple groups that we promote here, and that can help with recruiting. We have something called North America Young Generation Nuclear. It's a long acronym, but it's basically the younger folks who come here, they can belong, and they do social events, they do lunch and learns, and it's a way to build the next generation of nuclear workers. So that's one.
yeah.
The second one is women in nuclear, and we need to get more women in the nuclear industry. We are just not just something that we need to do. It's the right thing to do, and we did this up here about 18 months ago, and we've been just overly impressed at how much progress they've made, and they're connecting with WSU, with other companies, and a lot of opportunity there.
That's great. I think is Women in Nuclear. I think I saw them. It was like two younger engineers that were women that kind of started it. I think is that kind of the backstory in Women in Nuclear.
So I actually don't know the background for the countrywide version of Women in Nuclear. We had 4 people that volunteered here to stand up.
Great.
Chapter.
Okay.
And what was one of the things I love about this job is variety. I can talk to a press operator one day, I'll talk to a CEO the next, and then we actually had the benefit of touring Miss America here about 9 months ago. And we got Women in Nuclear with her in some small circle meetings, and it was just fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard, the tours that she did, stopped in at local manufacturers, and I think there was even an event that they had that I saw. And then since then I've read, national articles that have been written about her and her role within nuclear. And I think it's such a great opportunity for her to really highlight, the opportunities for women in nuclear. Really, really cool. So we're down to about 7 minutes. And one thing that I appreciate you saying, like, oh, I know a lot about the industry. I've got a lot to learn. I think it was actually on my last tour that you guys put together and did such a great job on. We actually had the nuclear caucus from the state of Washington, which is brand new. So Representative Stephanie Bernard started it, and you guys did a great job of touring them and hosting them. But I didn't realize, when it comes to your fuel assemblies and the fuel pellets, that essentially until they're put in water, which all of these are light water reactors, that's what activates the radioactivity, that, the safety factor involved in all of the forms that you guys handle it in. I think that's just a general question. I just was reminded of it. Should have started on the front end, but at the back end, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think anybody that doesn't know anything about nuclear, which I would definitely favor my own definition that way, but can you talk about that, Lance? The fuel as in regards to radioactivity in your fuel and fuel pellets.
Sure. So it's a large question. When you go on that tour, you walk by a whole bunch of fuel assemblies. You'll walk by 100 fuel assemblies as you go through the bundle area. And at that point, they're not, you use the word activated. So the fission activity is not occurring. And so that doesn't occur until all the conditions are right. And that is controlled in the power plant. So you can stand by an assembly. We monitor, we make sure you can still get dose. You need to monitor, you need to be safe, but they're not critical at that point. They're not having criticality reactions at that point. In fact, we have a product line that's kind of interesting. If a power plant shuts down and they have fuel that's not hasn't been in the core, they can ship that fuel to us and we will download the uranium and reprocess it and put that in a new fuel. So that's an example of that fuel has not gone through the criticality process, through the fission process.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think you guys even described it as like a recycling thing. And again, the statement you made earlier in the slides about being in a green industry, but utilizing green processes. I mean, that is such a great thing that, again, people don't know, maybe what Framatome does, but then, all the regulatory environment, along with being extremely environmentally conscious and sound in all of your process and procedure. That's really, really great.
Thank you, Karl.
Yeah. So we are at 9:56. I think it's time to start winding it down, Lance. This has really been great. Every time that you and I talk, every time I come to Framatome, I always learn something, and today's been no different. We really appreciate your time. Is there a closing remark or statement you like to make, or anything that you want to bring up that we missed?
Okay, I'll just say this. One, the future of nuclear is bright. Extremely bright, and Framatome is going to be a part of it, and that includes our site. That includes we will be growing with the advanced reactor market, so we're very excited about that. So that's one. Two, we love the passion in the community for workforce development, and it's not a but, and the passion needs to be turned into actions, and that's often the piece that we all get frustrated over. Is we know what the right thing to do is, and then it's figuring out the momentum and the process and the organization to truly make actions happen. So workforce development will be key for this site, and I'll volunteer right here on the phone. If you need anything related to workforce development, please come see me. We'll work with you.
Of course, and you've already, just like in careers to manufacturing and the stuff that you've already done, from internships to partnering with CBC, WSU, and the K-12 system, Lance, you've already put that into action and shown us that you are really one of the leaders in the community and workforce. So as we all work together as the community to come up with better pipelines for local kids, you're definitely have a seat at the table, and will be part of our process. There's no doubt.
I'll bring my coffee mug. That sounds great.
All right, that's perfect. Well, Lance, again, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. This is long overdue. You've always been on our radar that we wanted to have you on, but thank you for your time today. Thank you for your investment in TriDeck and serving as our board member. It really means a lot to us. And as we move forward collectively as a community on workforce, again, you'll definitely be at the table, and who knows, you might even end up leading it. Who knows? We'll keep all our options open. How's that?
Fantastic, Karl. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for the smile and believe. Okay.
There you go.
Together.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Lance. Have a good weekend.
All right. You too.